So you brought some photos. What are we looking at here? What do you have for us?
This is a lady who came complaining mostly about her neck. And Randy, I want you to take a look at how droopy her neck is.
This is a young gal, looks like.
She's a young gal, very beautiful lady. What I noticed during the consultation that even though the neck was an issue, her chin was a little weak. So what I did,
you say weak chin, meaning?
Weak chin meaning that she doesn't have a whole lot of projection. And I brought that to her attention, and what I offered her was liposuction of the neck to define her jaw angle. Then, through a tiny incision over the chin, I was able to tighten the neck muscles, also known as platysmoplasty, and put a small implant, not a big implant. Just
a chin implant?
A chin implant,
okay,
to give her a subtle look. And you can see.
It doesn't look like the same gal.
She doesn't look very strong.
She looks like she lost
jaw.
20 pounds or something.
It does have that effect on people once you tighten up the neck and give them that extra angle of the jaw.
Very nice.
It looks like they're much younger. And
so when it's done, do they say that the people compliment them? They can't quite pinpoint what was done? Because even though this is subtle, it's really changed her look.
People do tell them that they've had something, they think that they have something done, but they can't pinpoint it. They tell them, you look younger. What have you done? Are you eating better? Are you exercising?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now let's go over this gentleman, a male, who, and I want you to concentrate on the before picture. Very weak chin. The chin is completely back, very full neck. You can't see the jaw lines.
Now, when he comes to you on a consult, does he tell you, yeah, I don't like my chin?
They don't necessarily know that. This gentleman came actually for just rhinoplasty. And if you look at the nose, the tip is plunging a little bit, and he's got a little bit of a hump over his nose.
Okay.
And this is a very common combination that we see, that the nose is a little prominent, the neck is weak, meaning that it's full, and the chin is recessed, not projecting. So what I offered him was rhinoplasty, a chin implant, and liposuction of the neck. And you can see the difference. He's completely changed his face. On this side view.
It's like a chiseled face. I mean,
it's very angular face, and he's got a very strong jawline. The chin is in the proper position.
So that chin, it's just a small little implant.
It's a very small implant, and if you look at the nose, the tip is up, the tip is refined, and the hump is gone. Even though the changes are subtle, but when you add all these little bits and pieces together, it changes somebody's figure completely.
He also looks, when you put the before and after side by side, almost more sophisticated on the after.
Correct, and he's a very good friend of mine, and the story is that I've known him since college, and walked into this office, and after he's had the rhinoplasty and his facial work by me, and the first lady that he met, he married.
Is that right?
That's right. And they're still very happily married.
Because his confidence, I mean, his self-esteem was up.
I believe so, and he was a very shy guy when we were back in college together, and after this, he became quite
a different story.
Guy, yeah.
I mean, do you see that you make small changes with certain people and their personality changes?
Well, that's the artistic part of the whole consult. The scientific part is how to do something. The artistic part is recognizing and translating the words into little bits of pieces of surgery.
Okay.
That's the translation part, and art comes into that. And the smoother the transaction goes, the happier the patient will be.
Okay. Okay. Now this woman, you have a woman over there.
Now let's move on to some rhinoplasty cases, and
that's nose, like
nose job, basically. Okay. And the point I want to make is that a Caucasian nose is not for everybody. She's a very beautiful ethnic lady, and if you notice, she's got a little bit of a hump over her nose.
Very small.
Very small, subtle, and the tip is pointing down.
And it bothered her.
It bothered her quite a bit, as a matter of fact. And what I did for her, I removed the hump and redefined the tip and lifted up a little bit. Even though the changes are very subtle, you can see it's changed her figure.
Okay, so in the after and the before, yeah, very nice. And noses, you like doing noses?
I like doing noses because I understand them. I have an engineering background, so I can understand
I met a lot of guys, I told you this, and they don't like doing noses. Why do you like doing noses?
Noses are difficult to do in a sense that building a house. When you build a house, you have to lay down the foundations properly. Everything else goes on top. So if you don't understand the nose and you don't understand the foundations, a few degrees of miscalculation, removing too much, can later on damage the house. If you lay down the foundation wrong for a house, it doesn't matter what you build on top. No matter how pretty it is, it will collapse at the end.
So the nose, one of the trickier procedures in the world of plastic surgery?
It can be, and I've seen a lot of plastic surgeons who shy away from it and refer them to me. You have to have an understanding of the nose. It's probably one of the areas of the face that requires solid thinking, meaning that you cannot overdo it. It can change itself later, and it has to be approached in a very mathematical way.
Is that right?
Correct. There are measurements, there are angles, and there are more angles and more textbooks that will be written for rhinoplasty than any other field in plastic surgery. Let me give you another example of rhinoplasty. And beautiful Caucasian lady. Now her nose has different issues.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty good to me.
Right, exactly. With most,
but what bothered her? I mean,
with most Caucasian ladies, the angles are fine, but in her, the complaint was subtle. I don't like the hump on my nose.
Okay.
So all I did for her was remove the hump, even though it's subtle. You can see how it changed her figure, and define the tip a little bit. She had a little button nose.
So you picked it up a little bit?
Not necessarily picking it up. I just defined the tip, meaning that made it a little bit narrower. So on profile, she had a more angled, chiseled look. Let's look at some eyelid procedures. Beautiful lady. Her complaint was, I look tired and angry.
She looks pretty good to me.
She looks good, but I'll show you what the problems were. She basically didn't like how her upper eyelids were hanging over her eyes, and she didn't like the folds around the corners of her mouth. She also didn't like the circles around their eyes and the fullness on there. Now, this is an example where an inexperienced plastic surgeon could go wrong. Even though her upper eyelids need a procedure that we call blepharoplasty or eyelid tuck, the lower eyelids, by someone inexperienced, would be approached by a procedure known as fat removal, etc., whereas that didn't need to be done on her. What I did for her, I removed some skin from the upper eyelid, and you can see what the difference is. You can barely see the scars. And instead of removing fat, I plumbed her under eyes.
I mean, she does look completely different.
Right, so...
Very soft.
So surgery, removing things and cutting things is not always the answer. Sometimes you have to add things. And I did the same thing for her folds, and you can see that she looks much, much happier on the picture.
It's a softer look.
It's a much softer look.
Very pretty. Now, over the eyes, though, you did a blepharoplasty over the eyes.
Correct. It's a very technical procedure. This is an area that should be approached very subtly, meaning that even a millimeter of excess skin removal can really give you a very, very hollowed out look.
So you took skin from over her eyes, the blepharoplasty?
Yes, and a commonly mistake that gets done by inexperienced plastic surgeons or other cosmetic surgeons that are not properly trained is to remove too much. Sometimes
what happens with too much?
If that happens, which is a very difficult thing to correct, they get a very aged cadaveric look, and it's
skeletal. I see that.
Very skeletal, very hollowed out, very aged.
Interesting.
And the best approach sometimes is the simplest approach. Remove less, and you can see that even though a subtle procedure was done, the difference was significant.
She looks younger, I mean, there's no doubt about it, but she looks much prettier.
She's much happier. She looks happier, that's the whole thing. She looks happier.
Okay, okay. Does she say, now do people react to her differently? I mean, does she tell you that?
She has mentioned to me several times that when her friends approach her, they tell her that initially when she had the procedure done, that they felt that she looked happier, basically smiling more, even though she's never been considered an unfriendly person and things like that, and they kept inquiring whether she had any procedure done, etc. But they could never point out what she had done. Do you think at 20 yards away you can spot her that she?
Well, I say that I can spot it. No, if I saw her, I mean, you wouldn't know.
Probably not.
She just looks like a natural beauty.
Very subtle. She's a beautiful lady, just a very subtle changes.